Hello, welcome back to the channel. So in the 3.2 livestream, the devs did confirm that Silver Wolf, Blade, Kafka, and Jingliu will be getting buffed into 3.4, which is actually kind of surprising to me because Silver Wolf and Blade are like obvious picks for buffs, right? Besides maybe like Celia, they're like the ones that most people talk about. But Kafka is kind of a weird one to me because I feel like her problem is just that there isn't that much good dot synergy besides like Black Swan, and that's kind of it. I feel like Jingliu is kind of fine, I just don't think the content right now really benefits her that much. And I'll be honest, I don't really even know how good she is, because I feel like no one has talked about her in like so long. Like, I've not heard anyone talk about her at all ever since like 2.0. So I thought, you know what, it would be interesting to theorize about what the buffs could potentially be, since we don't really have any precedent for this, and we're probably not going to get any idea until the 3.4 livestream. Now, the goal here isn't to make them like S tier broken level, it's to make them like more viable and feel better to play. Also, I am not a game designer, I'm not a character designer, I'm just going off of like how I feel and what I think would be interesting and just general vibes, you know. And also, you know, I'm not a guide maker or anything, so if you want more like in-depth like numbers and stuff like that, then you know, go to them. So let's start off with one that I think is probably the most obvious regarding buffs, which is Silver Wolf. Silver Wolf is kind of a hard one, especially with Anaxa coming out, just doing what she does just way better. I think the most obvious thing is to make her skill like AoE instead of a single target, like maybe it hits like 3 enemies instead of just 1, because I feel like hitting all enemies with the skill would be a bit like too big of a change, but I don't know, I mean, you could if you really wanted to. And then I would also think that a way to differentiate her from Anaxa would be to lean way more into like the bugs aspect of her kit. So I would change her talent from just whenever she attacks to whenever a character attacks, she implants a bug. So it would work with the whole team. So whenever like any character on your team attacks, she has a chance to implant a bug. Which you might say is like a bit too good, but I think it's fine if the base chance is still like the 74% that it is. Because I feel like at 100% it might be too good, because imagine like just run like follow-up teams and she just implants like a million bugs every single time the character attacks. I would change her A1 trace to have a chance to inflict a bug for every weakness type on the enemy when the enemy is broken, instead of just having a chance base. I think that would make more sense for her like weakness type thing, you know? So, you know, basically how it would work, you know, when the enemy is broken, it sort of like rolls the chance for every single element type that the enemy has, and then it implants a bug every single time it succeeds, you know? Besides that, I would like, I don't know, maybe increase her all-type res reduction on her A6 by like 5 or even to like 8%, since 3% is like basically nothing. Like, you might as well not even have it. Yeah. I mean, at the same time, you do kind of need to be careful with all-type res because it's just such a powerful stat, you know? Now, this might seem like a lot of changes, but at the same time, like, I do think that this would give her like a niche as like the ultimate like debuff option, and give her more ways to differentiate herself from Anaxa. And, you know, I do think that her being more of a debuffer does make sense, and also she would be more enticing for a lot of more debuff teams, instead of them just kind of going more towards, you know, characters like Acheron, or even if we get more characters that work with debuffs in the future. Now, you know, moving on from Silver Wolf, let's talk about Blade. So I feel like even when Blade came out, his damage was kind of underwhelming, at least to me, and I feel like it's just only gotten worse and worse with time. Like, his damage is just so bad now. So first thing that I would do is just increase his damage scalings across the board. You know, his base attack, his ultimate, you know, all of that. And then also change some of his traces. Because this is definitely a trend with a lot of early characters, is that their traces are just awful. Like feels like for half of them, they were just like, I don't know, just give them some sort of defensive property. And that was kind of it. So I would change his A4 trace, basically just completely, because he already has a healing trace with his A1, and I feel like that fits way more with what he wants to do than his A4 does, especially since, you know, his ult always sets him to half HP, so he's going to be hit to half HP more often. So I would change it to be whenever Blade's HP is changed, like, you know, whenever he gets healed or he takes damage, he gets a stack, and every stack increases his attack by like, I don't know, let's say like 2%, and then up to a max of like, I don't know, let's say 10 stacks, but if that's like too strong, you could do like 5. And the buff would last for 2 turns, and if the buff goes away, then you just lose all of the stacks. So you do want to continuously be changing his HP. I feel like this doesn't make sense thematically for Blade, because he's always like, you know, going down and going back up and going down and going back up. And also it feels like he has benefits for losing health with, you know, his property on his ult, but he doesn't really have them much benefits for getting healed, which is kind of like, his thing. The follow-up heals him. He wants to go up and down his health all the time, I also made it so that it's when his HP changes, because his ult already benefits from him losing HP, so it feels kind of redundant to have the trace that does the exact same thing, And it also gives him more synergy with healers, so it makes him even better with healers, but also with characters like Jingliu, more than she even did before, which I do think is thematic for them to be good in a team together, since they were part of the same group. Okay, but moving on from the more, obvious characters, we have Kafka, who, maybe this is a hot take, I don't know, I don't really think Kafka needs a buff. I think the main problem with Dot is that they just don't have that many great options for characters, and are, the only archetype that doesn't have a dedicated support. If I had to come up with something, maybe, increase her scalings across the board, like Blade, maybe for, quality of life, allow her basic attack to inflict shock as well, and make her A6 work with her basic attack, and then maybe to give her, a bit more, burst damage, make her skill do more damage based on how many dots are on the enemy, because I feel like that would make sense because it triggers it, but then the actual skill damage doesn't really matter that much as the dot damage, Kafka is a hard one because unlike a lot of other characters, there isn't just one thing that immediately sticks out to me as just bad, I feel like overall Kafka is just a good character that just doesn't have that much in terms of synergy. Now for the final character, Jingliu, who is kind of a weird one. I feel like everyone talked about how insanely good she was, and then once 2.0 hit, she just disappeared off the face of the earth, I swear to God. In terms of buffs, like the other DPSs, I would just increase her damage scalings. I feel like that's kind of obvious for most DPS characters. I would change her A1 since it makes no sense with the rest of her kit. I guess it's kind of nice, so they are less likely to get frozen or something. But at the same time, half the time you just don't really care. You'd rather just kill the enemy, So I would just change it so that when she's in her enhanced state, she gets 40% extra crit damage. I do think that this is thematic, since her state gives her extra crit rate, but it doesn't give her extra crit damage, which always felt a little weird to me. I feel like it should be both, but I don't know. Now, 40% might seem like a lot, but there's characters like Herta that give 80% to the whole team, so I think that this is fair, I would also maybe change her A4, which is the one that allows her to action advance forward, to also work with her enhanced skill, just as a quality of life thing, and also because I feel like that would make more sense. I don't really know why it's just her normal skill and not her enhanced skill. I feel like that doesn't really make any sense. But I don't know. I don't think Jingliu needs a whole lot of changes. I just think that she needs a couple of tweaks. And now, do I think that all of these changes are necessarily realistic and going to happen? Probably not, especially the ones that are super specific effects. I don't think that they're going to do those exact things. But I definitely think that at least the damage scaling things are probably going to happen. But I don't know. I mean, there isn't really that much precedent for it. I think the only time they've ever buffed a character was Zhongli. I don't even remember what they did for him. But I don't know. I definitely hope that they do more buffs after this in the future. Characters like Sealy, the obvious one, Yanqing, a lot of the 4 stars, But we'll just have to wait and see where the trajectory goes. But I hope that the changes I suggested were at least interesting, and if you guys have any idea for buffs for other characters, make sure to leave them in the comments below. And if you would like to see me talk about maybe buffs for other characters, make sure to leave that in the comments as well. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.